Las Vegas did something no city should ever have to do. It drilled a tunnel nearly 3 miles long beneath the largest reservoir in the United States, and it aimed the end of that tunnel at the very bottom of the lake. Not the middle. Not a safe margin above the floor. The bottom. The deepest, last remaining water in a reservoir that has been shrinking for 25 years straight. That is not a metaphor. That is not dramatic framing. That is an $817 million hole in the earth, sitting right now at 860 feet above sea level, waiting for the day the water above it runs out. And here is the part nobody wants to say out loud. They did not build it, hoping they would never need it. They built it because they expect to. Here is the number you need to hold in your head. 860 feet. That is the elevation where the new intake taps Lake Mead. To understand why that number should stop you cold, you need one more. Today, the surface of Lake Mead sits at roughly 1,052 feet above sea level. Full pool is 1,229 feet. The lake has not touched full since 1983. Since the year 2000, it has dropped about 160 feet, the height of a 15-story building gone. And the federal government's own projections say it could fall to all-time record lows by July of 2027, dropping past the 1,040 feet it hit in the brutal summer of 2022. The water is going down. It has been going down for a generation. And Las Vegas, watching the trend line, did the math and made a decision that tells you everything. It drilled below the point of no return. Las Vegas draws roughly 90% of its drinking water from Lake Mead. 90%. 2 million residents. 40 million tourists a year. Every fountain on the Strip, every glass of water in every casino, every suburban lawn and swimming pool out in Henderson and Summerlin, almost all of it comes from one shrinking lake fed by one overpromised river. Southern Nevada itself gets a little over 4 inches of rain a year. There is no backup sky. There is no second river. There is the Colorado, there is Lake Mead, and there is whatever Las Vegas can physically pull out of it. So when the lake started falling, the question was never whether to act. It was how deep they were willing to go. For decades, Las Vegas drank through 2 intakes, 2 straws reaching into the lake. The first sits at 1,050 feet. The second at 1,000 feet. For most of the 20th century, that was fine. The lake sat comfortably above both. Nobody pictured the surface dropping low enough to leave a straw-sucking air. Then the mega drought arrived. Since 2000, the Colorado River Basin has been locked in the driest stretch in more than 1,200 years of tree ring record. The snowpack that feeds the river thinned. The runoff shrank. And the lake that 2 million people drink from began falling, foot after foot, year after year, until water managers looked at the trajectory and realized the top straw could one day be left high and dry, drawing nothing but warm, stagnant, algae-choked water from a dying surface. So in 2005, the Southern Nevada Water Authority approved the thing that should not have been necessary: the third straw. Officially, intake number 3. Construction began in 2008. And it became the most complicated and expensive project the agency had ever attempted. Engineers compared it to building the Lincoln Tunnel under the Hudson River, the Eisenhower Tunnel through the Rockies, and Hoover Dam itself. A 23-foot tunnel boring machine, longer than 2 football fields, began grinding through solid rock 600 feet beneath the surface, on a journey that would take more than 1,500 days. It bored 3 miles. Much of it directly underneath one of the largest man-made reservoirs on Earth, under crushing water pressure that engineers said had never been worked through at that scale before. It did not come cheap, and it did not come without cost. The project ran $817 million. It took 2 starts, more than 6 years, and the life of one worker who died building it. Crews floated a concrete and steel intake funnel 100 feet tall and weighing 1,200 tons 3 miles out into the lake, then sank it methodically to the bottom and cemented it into a blasted pit with the equivalent of more than 1,000 truckloads of concrete. The result is a clean 20-foot tube big enough to drive a subway train through, sloping down from a shaft 55 stories below Saddle Island to a vault fixed to the lake floor. On a December morning, the boring machine punched through to the intake structure with minutes to spare before noon. In September 2015, the third straw began delivering water to Las Vegas. And then, Because falling lakes do not stop falling on command, they kept building. The third straw alone could only pull water down to 1,000 feet because it shared a pumping station with the older intake. So Las Vegas spent hundreds of millions more on a low lake-level pumping station, finished in 2020, engineered to keep water moving even as the surface sinks toward catastrophe. Together, the tunnel and the pumping station carry a price tag in the neighborhood of $1.4 billion. More than $1 billion of public money. All of it spent on a single idea. Make sure Las Vegas can still drink even if Lake Mead drops to a level that would shut down everything else. Now sit with what that level actually is. The third straw's intake sits at 860 feet. Hoover Dam stops being able to release water downstream at 895 feet. That is called Deadpool, the elevation where the dam can no longer push water through, where the river below it effectively stops. Las Vegas built its straw 35 feet below Deadpool. Read that again. The city engineered its survival to reach water that exists at a level where, for everyone downstream, the system has already collapsed. They did not plan for the worst case. They planned for past it. Noah Hofs, a project manager who worked on the pipeline, summed up the whole point in one quiet line. When you turn on the tap, you do not think about it. That was the goal. To make the unthinkable invisible. To keep the water flowing in homes and casinos, even as the lake that feeds them drains toward a number that should terrify the entire Southwest. And the lake has already shown what it looks like when it gives up its secrets. In the summer of 2022, when Lake Mead fell to around 1,040 feet, the receding water did not just expose cracked mud and stranded docks. It exposed the dead. Human remains surfaced from the lakebed, including a body found inside a barrel, a relic of an old crime the water had hidden for decades. Sunken boats that had rested unseen for half a century broke the surface, hulls dried and gaping in the sun. A World War II-era landing craft emerged from the silt. The lake became, briefly, a kind of archive of everything it had been quietly swallowing since 1936. That is what a falling reservoir does. It does not just shrink, it uncovers. And the trajectory says there is more shoreline yet to expose, more lakebed yet to dry, more of the past yet to surface as the future keeps draining away. But engineering does not make it rain. The third straw does not add a single gallon to Lake Mead. It cannot draw more water than before, and it cannot slow the drop. It only changes where in the dying lake Las Vegas can reach. The deeper problem sits upstream, in the snowpack that is not falling and the river that is over-allocated, promised to more people than it has ever reliably held. The Colorado supplies water to nearly 40 million people across 7 states and Mexico. The rules that share it were written during an unusually wet century, dividing up more water than the river actually carries in a dry one. And right now, it is dry. Lake Mead has been in a federally declared shortage. Nevada's allotment has already been cut by 21,000 acre-feet a year. Reclamation's models show the lake sliding toward record lows. The agreements that govern it expire at the end of 2026, and the basin states are still arguing over what comes next. Las Vegas has done more than almost any city in America to stretch its supply. It pays residents to rip out grass. It bans ornamental lawns. It recycles nearly every drop of indoor water back into the lake. About 60% of its remaining use is outdoor, and the agency is fighting that number block by block. By per-person consumption, the city is a conservation success story. And still, none of that conservation, none of that engineering, none of that $1.4 billion changes the one fact underneath all of it. The lake is falling, and the river is not refilling it. So here is where it leaves us. Stand on the white mineral ring around Lake Mead, the bathtub band of bleached rock marking where the water used to be, 20 stories above where it is today. Look out at the boat ramps that end in dry dirt and the marinas left high above the shoreline. Somewhere below that surface, 3 miles out and 860 feet down, sits a billion-dollar straw waiting in the dark for the day it becomes the only one that still works. Las Vegas drilled past Deadpool because it stopped believing the lake would stay above it. The engineering is finished. The straw is in place. The only question left is the one no tunnel, no pumping station, and no amount of concrete can answer. What does a city do when even the deepest straw reaches dry?